So clearly one of the silliest arguments I've heard in the world of sports today has to be the debate over whether or not the Los Angeles Lakers are a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. I don't know about you, but last time I checked, LeBron James is still on the Los Angeles Lakers.
You're listening to the House of Takes NBA show with Dave Daba, the only NBA show in North America that believes the Rudy Gobert trade worked out for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Presented by Stealth.ltd.
Welcome back to the House of Takes NBA show. I am Dave Daba, and I have to say this whole debate about the Los Angeles Lakers not being a legitimate threat in the Western Conference has to be one of the silliest things I've heard. It would be like telling me that new Adam Sandler movie is going to win an Academy Award. If you haven't had a chance to suffer through Netflix Spaceman yet, I cannot and will not highly recommend that movie to anyone. Look, ultimately, the Los Angeles Lakers are absolutely a legitimate threat in the Western Conference, and I'm about to tell you why. Now, we will get into the Denver Nuggets part of this story here for you in just a second, but when you look at the Western Conference and you ask yourself, after the All-Star game, who have the Los Angeles Lakers beaten that are legitimate contenders in the Western Conference? The first answer is the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers, who I actually believe are the second biggest threat in the Western Conference. And then last night, they ended up taking down the Oklahoma City Thunder in Los Angeles. A big night once again by the resurgent D'Angelo Russell. There are so many people in North America, in the sports media, that are not paying attention to what D'Angelo Russell has done over the last 3 months with the Los Angeles Lakers. D'Angelo Russell is the third best player consistently now on this Los Angeles Laker team. Fully capable of scoring between 20 and 30 points a night. And when we get to the actual playoffs, if Darvin Ham doesn't screw up and keeps actually D'Angelo Russell in the rotation long enough, in other words, D-Russ needs enough minutes. As long as he does that, all of this talk about the Los Angeles Lakers are really poor at shooting three-pointers is going to go away, because D'Angelo Russell being that third scorer, which is something you absolutely need when you hit the playoffs, will be extremely important to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, look, when it comes to playoffs, and when it comes to the NBA in general, it really is all about exploiting matchups. I mentioned this on a previous podcast last week. But when you really think about exploiting matchups, what does that mean? Who does that well in the NBA? I want you to take a look. This is a homework assignment for the fans out there. I want you to go take a look at that Minnesota Timberwolves roster and tell me, outside of Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and Karl Anthony Towns, you've got an aging Mike Conley, and then who else? Who else is on that team that should actually have the Minnesota Timberwolves currently first in the Western Conference? It is because Chris Finch, the head coach, as well as the rest of the Minnesota Timberwolves coaching staff, have gotten extremely good at exploiting matchups. They understand how to put together matchups to actually win games. Look, they beat the Portland Trailblazers last night in Minnesota, And I would say that was a key example of why the Minnesota Timberwolves are currently in first place. We all know the Portland Trailblazers are not a good team, but yet the Portland Trailblazers were able to hang with the Minnesota Timberwolves throughout most of the game. And the reason for that is, quite frankly, the backside of that Minnesota Timberwolves roster, while it is nice sometimes with Naz Reid, is not that strong. And ultimately, the T-Wolves are sitting there in first place, at least as of now, because Chris Finch has become very good at exploiting matchups. We know the same thing can be said about this Boston Celtics team as well. The Boston Celtics have become extraordinarily good at exploiting the matchups that are actually in front of them. Why did the Los Angeles Lakers win that in-season tournament? The answer to that question, at least during those games, Darvin Ham was able to exploit the matchups that he had in front of us. Why did the Los Angeles Lakers last year make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals? The answer is really pretty simple. They were able to exploit those matchups. I believe that the Los Angeles Lakers will have no problem with the Oklahoma City Thunder, will have no problem with the Minnesota Timberwolves, will have no problem with anybody else outside of the Clippers and the Denver Nuggets, which makes them the third team in my Western Conference right now, which absolutely makes them a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. Now, I know you're sitting there saying, Dave, DeBaugh, what the hell are you talking about? The Los Angeles Lakers have lost 8 games in a row to the Denver Nuggets. They are not going to be able to beat the Denver Nuggets in an 8-game series. And the reality is, if you go back and look at the statistics from those last 8 games, and for the most part, if you look at the 5 minutes with 5 minutes to go in those games, the Los Angeles Lakers in most of those games were either ahead or down by 5. The Los Angeles Lakers have absolutely been able to hang with the Denver Nuggets in most of the games that they have actually played during the last 2 years, which makes them, of course, a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. Do I think the Lakers can actually beat the Denver Nuggets? Look, if everybody is healthy on both rosters, the answer is probably no. But do I think they're going to win a couple games in the Western Conference this year? Yes. And do I think the Denver Nuggets could be upset by another team like the Los Angeles Clippers, who certainly have a significantly taller and better front court than the Los Angeles Lakers do? I mean, outside of Anthony Davis, who is actually there to rim protect. The Clippers, if they played their cards right, certainly have enough big bodies to cause trouble for the Denver Nuggets. And then imagine a Los Angeles versus Los Angeles Western Conference. Would you trust James Harden over LeBron James? I'm just asking. So when you look at the entire picture, to say that this Los Angeles Laker team is not a legitimate threat is just absolutely nonsense. All right, that is it for tonight's House of Takes NBA show. Hey, listen, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet to the big channel, please go ahead and subscribe. And of course, like this video. Our show is now 3 weeks out in podcast form as well, so do check it out. For the House of Takes NBA show, I'm Dave DeVaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
You've been listening to the House of Takes NBA show with Dave Daba, presented by Stealth.ltd.